Welcome to the PMP Podcast. I am your host, RJ Isaac. Today, I have a very special guest. I get to sit down with Nick Stageberg. Now, Nick is the CEO of Black Swan Real Estate, and he brings a very unique perspective to property management. Prior to getting into the industry, he had a successful career in software development, and he takes his learnings and experiences he had there and brings them into property management for a very effective and very unique way of doing real estate investing and property management together. So stick with me because this is an episode you will not want to miss. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you and learn more about Black Swan Realty. And is that right, Black Swan Realty?
Black Swan Real Estate, and our property management company is Black Swan Living Property Management. We've got a few different arms to our organization there.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So yeah, really excited to learn more about how you get started. Actually, I want to start right there. So give me your background. Tell me about how you got into this industry. From what I understand, you have a really interesting background in how you got there.
Yeah. So I have a bachelor's degree in computer science and a bachelor's degree in ministry. And my wife, who's my full partner in the business, Elaine, she's a physician, trained at the Mayo Clinic. So we both had kind of an interesting journey to get to property management. I had the good fortune to get in the ground floor and lead two tech startups from zero to 100 employees. The first one went from 13 million venture capital to 100 million in private equity sale over the course of 9 years. And then the second one, I led a startup for the Mayo Clinic, the intrapreneurship movement, where Amazon, Facebook, they'll sponsor startups underneath their vertical to innovate. So that was another software development consultancy where we would compete with outside vendors for software development contracts. So startup within Mayo. All along the way, my wife and I were building a portfolio on the side. So 1 year we'd buy one house, next year we'd buy two houses, and just kind of organically grew that portfolio. And then after about 15 years, I felt like I had kind of conquered every mountain you can conquer in the technology world. And same with my wife, training at the Mayo Clinic and just kind of going through every elite. She has a lot of letters after her name. And we decided to do the real estate thing. That was kind of a new mountain to conquer. And one thing that's really neat is we've taken a lot of the management methodologies, philosophy, kind of ethos of technology and medicine that are kind of very progressive industries where things are always changing, and applying that to real estate. Not quite as fashion forward. A lot of property managers out there might be over the age of 70. Lots of paper contracts still being used in our industry. So I'm sure we can get into that a little bit more. But we built a property management company and then got into joint venture partnerships with our investors that we represented, and then eventually launched a private equity fund. So we have over a third of $1 billion in assets under management today. Most of which we have a very significant ownership stake in. So those aren't just third-party management clients; those are clients that evolved into full partners in the business. So we own probably on average 50 or 60% of that third of $1 billion in assets under management today.
Oh wow, that's really quite impressive. So I definitely do want to get into this whole aspect about how the technology and the medicine and the experience you each have in those fields have influenced the way you handle property management. So can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, lots of things we can touch on. So let's take a really concrete example that I think will speak to the people who are listeners of your podcast. So if we rewind the clock about 30 years, so it's circa 1990, maybe even a little bit more than 30 years, in tech and in software engineering, they practiced what was called a siloed management model. So you had a big project you need to work on, you'd staff a developer to work on that project. And then that developer would kind of work furiously on that project. And it was really efficient having that one developer work on it because they didn't have anyone they needed to communicate with. Communication overheads, could double, triple, 10x the, kind of overheads associated with software engineering to, have one engineer get into the brain of another engineer, that sort of thing. And that project would do pretty well. But then one day that engineer would get stuck and they wouldn't really be able to get help getting stuck, or there'd be like an emergency where they needed to kind of, okay, we had let's say it's a good thing, we 1000x our sales in this line of business here in the last week, which is something that can happen in software engineering. We need to pour more resources into this project, but you just have that one engineer, which means it's difficult to bring additional resources to bear when some additional resources are needed. And then eventually that software engineer leaves. They get hit by a bus, they retire, they find another job, whatever it is. And then you're really stuck because you don't have anyone else that knows that code, that knows that project, that knows that customer, that knows that server, whatever it is. So that was kind of the de facto management model for decades, from when computer science, from software engineering was born until probably right around 1990. That's when a lot of, thought leaders said, man, this seems like a really short-sighted way to manage people, and switched to a team-based model. I would say by about the year 2000, it was really a very antiquated concept in technology to have that style of management model. So instead of having like 4 engineers and each of those engineers would work on one project each, you'd have those 4 engineers work on 4 different projects. And the interesting thing was those 4 engineers, once they kind of got on the same page and they understood each other's thought processes, eventually they could manage 8 projects or 12 projects, because 1 + 1 not equal 2, 1 + 1 equal 10. When you got stuck, you had you could talk to get inspiration or help when you need to bring in additional resources. Let's say we needed to pour 100 people into this project because we had a great sales quarter or something like that. Now you have 4 people that can train those additional resources, not just one person, and you already have a team-based management model. So you already have systems and processes for documenting things and communicating things and managing things. You have visibility and key performance indicators. All of a sudden, it's 10,000 times more easy to grow and to bring those additional resources. We do that exact same thing with property management. So I would say probably like 90% plus property management companies, they practice a siloed staffing model. So you have a site manager, and they're kind of the president of that apartment building that they manage, and they're on their own. And this is considered a virtue, I would say, in the industry, that you have accountability and responsibility. Often that person lives in that apartment community, and so they're there, 24 hours a day. And sometimes that can be a really good thing where you have a site manager that really loves on that community and loves on those tenants and takes amazing care of it. But in my opinion, more often than not, this is a really toxic management model, because maybe you'll find this the case if there's not sufficient oversight and accountability. There's problems that can easily be hidden. There can be deferred management. There can be relationships between that site manager and those tenants that aren't healthy relationships, because that manager's there all the time. So people are knocking on their door or asking for special concessions that they may or may not be able to get because they have that special relationship. Whereas when you have a scattered site model, so what we do is we de-staff site offices for our individual apartment buildings. We bring all of our staff into a central location. We have, most businesses, there's kind of 3 legs to that business. You have a sales and marketing leg, you have an operations leg, and then you have a legal, finance, accounting, kind of administrative overhead leg. And we build a business, a property management business, just like a normal business. We don't pretend we have kind of a special snowflake business here. At first, our tenants hate it. They hate seeing that site manager go away. But in short order, they see the outrageously good level of customer service that we're able to provide, because we have so many more staff that we're able to bring to bear on a problem. So when you call our number, we pick up the phone every single time. Whereas when you have that siloed model, you call that site manager, they might be at a showing, they might be managing a maintenance escalation, they might be just taking a break, and that phone doesn't get answered most of the time, in my experience. And when a lead comes in, we have a team that's doing all of our leasing, and we can say, okay, we've got literally 1,000 different options to offer you. You inquired about this building, but it sounds like this building over here might be a better fit for you. And our maintenance team, we don't have a site-specific maintenance staff, which again, I would say considered a virtue in the industry. And for me, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So instead of having a maintenance guy that's specific to a site, we have a maintenance guy who's like really good at appliances. We have a maintenance guy who's really good at boilers. We have these guys, they work together as a team. They're like cousins, and they do all the kind of, I'm going to say, rough and tumble work that other people are afraid to do. They're just fearless in taking on really big, heavy lift type projects. And we're able to specialize our maintenance team and provide incredible value, incredible response time, incredible resolution time to every single one of our tenants with that that team-based model. We don't practice a siloed model there. So it's, honestly, it's kind of the polar opposite of what most people go for in the industry. And it worked extraordinarily well for us. So that's just one example. There's lots of others I could speak to, but that would be one that I think might apply most to listeners to your podcast.
Yeah, definitely. This is actually the way you described it. When I actually first started getting in the industry, I started with a company that was at the cusp of switching from the siloed model to I forget what you called it.
Team-based model. Yeah.
The team-based model. And it was a very good experience because I got to see a little bit of some of the challenges that the siloed model felt. Primarily when I first started working, there was a maintenance coordinator, and that was their job. They coordinated maintenance. And now this was for single family houses, not for an apartment complex, but they had so much understanding about this one spot that that if we were to get rid of them, they were too integral to the way we ran the business. That
you're hostage to that person in a best
exactly.
case scenario, and God help you if that person decide to retire, move on to a different organization.
Exactly. Yep. And so we end up switching to what we at the time called the squad model, and except we only called it a squad in that single context. Everywhere else we called it teams. So same idea. But the idea was within a small team for even a single family portfolio of properties that each person within a team, so we'd have 3 people in a team, should know how to do the maintenance, be aware of what's happening with the maintenance on every single property. That way we could always fill in for someone. So if someone was sick, it's not a case of like, oh no, we're scrambling to figure out how is maintenance coordination done. Are we dropping balls here? Everybody within the team all had a very good understanding of how it was done. I don't think we went so far on the major multifamily properties that the company managed. On there, we still did have the in-house maintenance. In-house maintenance, but property-specific maintenance. And but it was also a bit of a balance between the two, because while we had a person who was on, since we had multiple major multifamily properties, we'd have a maintenance tech at one property, a maintenance tech at another property. But if there was more work that needed to be done at another one, we can say, all right, let's go link over to his other property, or the other way around. Or if we knew this guy, he was really good with drywall repair, he did just a beautiful job on drywall repair. This guy didn't, and we had some pretty serious drywall repair.
Science.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone has their own little specialties that they do. And then we also didn't really do, we still remained very property specific when it came to leasing. Not too much, because the major multifamily properties in particular, they were up. There's like one that was a very high-end luxury property that was the pricier option. It had a bunch of amenities that everybody wanted, and one that was a bit more affordable, without as many amenities, but still had a pool and some nice things. Just no elevator, no dog park in the place, all those kind of things. And so when it came to leasing, it wasn't that we had a leasing agent that stuck with the prospect. Instead, it was a case that we had the leasing agents worked together. And so he said, hey, this person, they thought the property was too expensive, so we're going to go to this one. Or this person, they really need an elevator because they have a bad knee. So you have an elevator, why don't you take this lead and pass them back and forth. And so I definitely, from my experience, it is huge a way. It's a great way to really be running the property management business. And having done it that way, I would never want to go back to doing anything where it's now in this siloed model anymore.
100%. Yeah. It gets you huge, superpower advantages too. So we have hundreds of single family homes that we manage, as you just spoke to, where you have to practice that scatter site management. And really critically, we love to buy properties that I describe as being in kind of the sour spot of the market in terms of size. So if you have let's say a fourplex, a quad, in most markets, people pay a steep premium for those because like a mom and pop, say like a physician couple that it's small enough that they can support it with their own balance sheet and income. They might have a fantasy that they can self-manage that property. It's small enough that you can take down just on your own very, very easily, get a conventional loan. And then properties that are, let's say, 100 units or more, or at least 60 units or more, that's where you start to be able to support that site manager concept. And so the institutional capital out there that pretty universally practice that siloed staffing model, they kind of murder each other, bidding up the price on those larger assets. And there's assets that are, let's say 12 to 50 units, and no one wants them. They tend to trade for the lowest per unit price or highest cap rate. And when you practice a team-based model, it's not that difficult to manage those assets. They certainly do have lower economies of scale because you still have to mow the lawn or clear snow in our market, and that's amortized against fewer units. But the kind of just deal breaker challenge that you can't support a site manager with a 30-unit apartment building, that goes away when you have the team-based model.
That's a really good point. And something else also you mentioned earlier, even about the whole idea about the sum of the total. I'm messing up the saying, where, but like if you have 4 people working on a project, it's not equal to just 4 people because they're working together.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking to say. Yes, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's also something that I can say is I've experienced as well, just where, again, each person has this individual idea about how to, when you run into problems, you're able to go in and get bounce ideas off of each person, and different people are going to have different skills. Something that I've had 2 areas that I particularly skilled in, if I do say so myself, is writing and also doing negotiations. And so anytime that there's someone that needs something written, what actually ended up happening is a bit of how things have happened in the past, where someone will send me an email they've written, and they said, hey, can you just look over this real fast? And then like a bit later, I send it back to them, and like, okay, I started changing like a couple things, just small modifications, and then like I changed the entire email, and they would read through it, and it's like, well, this is way better. So, but having that, again, it's a team where you're all working together makes that possible. But you said that there were some other areas where you've taken the software development skills and you've brought them to property management. What are some of the other ways you've done that?
Yeah, great question. I love talking these tactics. So most podcasts, it's, I don't know, kind of fluffy stuff, and I love just getting really fine grained. So to get really prescriptive, so there's a management methodology in tech called the Agile methodology, and we really practice Agile in our property management business. Perhaps you've heard of EOS, or listeners here have heard of EOS. EOS is very similar to Agile. Agile really descends from lean manufacturing or lean management principles, as does EOS. So there's a lot of kind of similar themes there. And, so like that 3-legged stool, for example, that's kind of an Agile concept or an EOS concept or a lean concept. Every single aspect of our business is managed as a lean pipeline. So you really only need 2 metrics to manage any aspect of your business, and that's queue depth and queue velocity. I'm going to say that a second time. It's a really critical concept to understand. You can manage any aspect of any business with queue depth and queue velocity, and you build what's called a value pipeline. So if you talk about lean or Agile methodology, let's say you're building a car, you have an assembly line. So you have you put a windshield on the car at one spot, you put wheels on the car at another spot. So you just need to look at how many cars are waiting to put a windshield on the car, how many cars are waiting to put wheels on the car, and then in the last hour, last day, last week, last month, how many wheels and windshields have you put on your car? And you just lay this out in a sequential order because you put the windshield on before you put the wheels on. So for us, we have several kind of stages in our value pipeline, as every property management business does. And this might sound really strange to someone running a property management business, but this is how every project in the technology world is run and has been run for decades. So these are kind of revolutionary concepts in the property management world, but very worn, tried and true concepts in technology. This is how Elon Musk was able to send rockets into space so quickly and build, make Tesla, just kind of explode out of nowhere, is with these management methodologies. That's how we've been able to grow our business so quickly. We've actually gone from 3 million in assets under management to 300 million in just 3 years. So we have to acquire assets, or in the case of property management company, put more assets under contract as managed units. We need to typically renovate those units after we acquire them. So we look at how many every week. So we actually just got done with our team meeting. So every week at 8 a.m. we meet, we review all these key performance indicators. There's full transparency. We have one Google sheet where every single one of these key performance indicators is arranged, and we all review them and see where the bottlenecks are in our pipeline. So we look at units under contract, units closed, renovations that are in progress or pending, and renovations that are completed. We look at leases that we've secured in the last 7 days, and how many units need to be leased, or we actually call it coming soon. So we track economic vacancy, but we also track properties in the next 90 days that could potentially be leased today. So we say those are coming soon. We look at maintenance tickets. There's typically most of your maintenance tickets you ever have in that unit right after move-in. So we look at how many tickets are pending and how many tickets has our maintenance team closed in the last week. So I happen to have these stats in front of me, and we've got over 1,000 units, and right now we have 96 pending maintenance tickets. They had 96 outstanding maintenance tickets, and we closed 125 maintenance tickets in the last 7 days. Our oldest untouched ticket is 7 days, so I find touch cadence is also a nice thing to keep track of. Right second, we have 45 units that are down for renovations, and about 6 of those units came out of that rehab down status in the last week. In the last week, we got 9 secured leases, and we have about 72 units that are coming soon. Units that may not necessarily be vacant yet. Maybe they're under renovation and they're getting close to done. Maybe they're moving out soon. So we could lease those. So you can see that we cycled 100% of our queue depth for our maintenance tickets in the last 7 days. You can see that we've cycled about 15% of our queue depth in renovations. And then you can see we've cycled about 15% of our queue depth in leasing. And those numbers, it would make sense if those numbers would be, about the same kind of numbers, so to speak, right? Because things are moving through that pipeline. We're trying really hard to keep those things, similar. And we have more vacancy than we'd like to have, but it's also March 6th in Minnesota. So it was, 20 below zero a few weeks ago. Not a lot of people lease units. It's a hyper seasonal leasing market here. So what we do is we tend to renovate a lot of units through the winter, and we see that coming soon number go up. We want that number to be really high going into the spring when things just explode from a leasing perspective, have lots of fresh inventory to offer people. And then going into the fall, gosh, we sure hope we've gotten every single unit leased, because if we don't have it leased by, say, Halloween, it's probably not getting leased until February 1st. And then we really focus on team improvement and lots of things that we do in the off season there. We manage our strategic items with the exact same kind of key performance indicators. We do investor relations. We have a private equity fund, so we own pretty much everything that we manage these days. We started out doing third-party management. We own most of the things we manage these days. So we track, how many investors do we have on our mailing list, and how many did we add in the last week? How much capital do we have, on the wait list for our next fundraising opportunity? How much did we raise in the last week? So again, it all goes back to queue depth and queue velocity. And I'll finish with one other thing. So I talked about how these are all transparent. So a lot of management organizations are very hierarchical. So only the CEO can see all the stats. Some managers even like the idea of having their staff compete. Yeah, I see that very often in the siloed staffing model for property management. So, well, this property manager, they have, 2% vacancy, and this property manager, they have 7% vacancy. So we want to have these people competing, not necessarily it's like seeing the score, just making sure we're communicating to that 7% property manager that there's someone else out there that's at 2%. You need to pick up the pace, or we're going to let you go, or something of that nature. And we just do like the polar opposite of that. So we have transparency in everything. We want that 2% property manager coaching that 7% property manager, or maybe there's a problem with the rehab that we're doing with that 7% property manager. It has nothing to do with the performance of that 7% property manager, because we have that team-based model. That person that's running the 2% property, they go over and do some showings with the 7% person. They say, man, this, the contractor, they're not doing good work over here. My 2% property, the rehabs look great. The 7% property, the rehabs don't look great. It has nothing to do with the leasing manager. In fact, turning over that leasing manager would just make the problem worse. And with that siloed model, it could take you a year to figure out what the true problem is. And by then, all the rehabs are done, and you dug yourself into a hole. So we have what's called safety culture. That comes from from my wife's career as a physician. So if you're in a surgical theater, you can never get in trouble for reporting a problem. In fact, the only thing you can get in trouble for is failing to report a problem. So if you're sewing up the patient after surgery and you're like, hey, I think we maybe forgot a sponge in the patient, And let's say you're wrong. Let's say we drop that sponge on the floor and someone says, oh no, I see it over here. You applaud that person that reported a problem. It turned out they were wrong, but you applaud that problem just for reporting a problem. And really the only thing you can get in trouble for, the only thing you can get fired for, like let's say a surgical procedure takes place and we accidentally left a sponge in the patient and we figure that out after that, you do a postmortem, or hopefully not a postmortem, but you do an after action report and you figure out, was there someone that, maybe missed a count or thought there was a problem and they just felt, kind of self-conscious about reporting it? How can we support that person? How can, can this person be on our team if they don't have the self-confidence to report a problem? So that's the epitome of safety culture right there. So we share our stats with our whole team. We say who's struggling, who is stuck on something, who needs help right now. And we live in kind of an ocean of abundance. In fact, the only key performance indicator that I have on our metrics. So every metric has a responsible party, the doer, and then each metric has an accountability party. So the owner, the person with whom the buck stops, if there's a problem with that metric. The only metric on the board that I'm accountable for is our team happiness. So 8 a.m. every Monday morning, we do we got about 32 employees, and we all do some dancing. I would say we put out a video of just dance, and we did some dancing, and we celebrate our wins. There's lots of cool things. One of our leasing agents just got his first property under contract for a client. He just got his real estate license on our team, so we celebrate that and numerous other wins. And then everyone submits an anonymous survey on a scale of 1 to 10, how much energy they have, how happy are they, and do they feel valued in their work? So this week, energy was a 7.8, happiness was an 8, and valued is an 8.5. Now, the goal is not to get a high score. The goal is to measure where our team's at. And I sincerely believe that, let's say our vacancy is through the roof. We've got 1 million maintenance tickets waiting. Our rehabs are all, over schedule and over budget, but our team feels like they're valued and they have energy, they have passion, they have excitement, they're glad they're here. Eventually those other metrics are going to be okay. But if all those other metrics look good and our team happiness is in the tank, things aren't going to work out so great. And none of this requires sophisticated software. We use Google Sheets to track all of our metrics. We use Google Forms to measure our team happiness. I promise anyone listening to this podcast, if you, work at, manage, own a property management company, if you just start tracking your team happiness, you're going to see performance, exponentially improve just by measuring it. You might be surprised by what you see, and that's a good thing. It's good to see those problems and be able to address those problems. And if your scores are through the roof, then people are going to celebrate that. Hey, it turns out I'm not the only one who loves working here. So those are just a few very, very, very concrete examples of how we apply some of the, I would say, culture of excellence from medicine and technology to our property management company. And that's how we've been able to achieve, I think, the pretty exceptional outcomes that we've been able to achieve in the few years we've been doing this.
That's really cool. And there's actually a lot to unpack here. And one thing I actually want to mention here is what I find really interesting is the answers you're giving as far as the way you're taking the experience from technology and bringing it to property management is not actually what I thought it was going to be. If I was to give what I expected the answers to be, I would imagine things like using more technological tools, like finding new apps to integrate and all of these ideas.
You don't use a lot of technology. We just pick up the phone when people call, and we use Google Sheets for pretty much everything. We don't even have a commercial CRM.
Really?
So this is going to sound crazy, but most technologists, when they get very advanced in their career, they have a little bit of an abhorrence for technology. People who are young in their tech career, they tend to be very fascinated with technology.
Yeah.
The apex of technology is something like eyeglasses. They work so well that you don't even notice they're there. And I would say the ultimate failure of technology would be kind of the latest and greatest gadget, like a first generation smartwatch, where you feel really excited to show off that you have a smartwatch, but it doesn't really work that well. It doesn't really create value. And all of these pieces of technology have a significant amount of overhead because they distract from that human connection. Like we're using StreamYard right now, and I feel really connected to you. I hope the people listening to this podcast feel really connected to me. That's like technology working, but most of the time in our modern life, technology gets in the way. And property management, it's a person-to-person business. People are going to rent from you, not when they see the latest and greatest Matterport tour, though we do own a Matterport camera, and not when they see the latest and greatest drone shoot, though we do own a commercial aerial survey drone. they're going to rent from you when they feel like you're going to pick up the phone and serve them when they have a maintenance emergency, or they just need convenience and they need you to pick up the phone and tell them what you have to offer and lease them a property in short order. I see a massive amount of technology entering the property management space right now. I don't want to name any names, but there's companies that do automated showings, automated responses for your maintenance tickets, for leasing inquiries, for operations inquiries, outsourced bookkeeping and legal compliance, outsourced maintenance altogether. And at the end of the day, these are all, I think, kind of a fascination with technology. I think a lot of property management companies have this fantasy that they can somehow outsource everything and it's all going to be okay. They don't have to manage employees and they don't have to actually communicate with their tenants, and somehow technology will make it all okay. And in my experience, the opposite happens. The more you implement those technologies and the more distant you feel from your tenants, the more your vacancy goes up, the more your maintenance ticket severity goes up, the more escalations you have, the lower your renewals are, and ultimately the lower your rental rate is. I remember we experiment with stuff all the time. We experiment with a self-showing technology, and we had a 0% conversion rate. We used it for an entire month, and we converted 0 leads. And I, had like a call with one of their higher ups, and they said, "Oh, well, we looked at our analytics for your area, and just your rents are too high. So if you just lower your rents, you're going to increase your conversion rate." And I'm like, "Yeah, but we were converting the leads at this price when people answered the phone." And they're like, "Yeah, but if you reduce your staffing, you reduce your costs, so that offsets the the higher rental rate." I'm like, "Well, that reduces the cost of the management company. That actually murders performance of the asset." And by the way, I think this pretty much proves that people like it when there's a human being that answers the phone and shows them a unit. And I would way, way, way rather have the person living in my property that's happy to pay a premium rental rate for a premium customer service experience, than a person who's on a search for the lowest rental rate and they don't have to look someone in the eye to lease from them. That feels like someone where I'm going to have some issues down the road with this tenant. Maybe their background check isn't 100% accurate. Maybe there's someone living there who didn't submit a background check, and they really didn't have anything to say to that. They just said, "No, this is the future. This is technology." I'm like, I know technology pretty well. I have managed hundreds of millions of dollars of different software engineering projects, and this feels like a fascination with technology, not real value creation.
Yeah, that's been largely my experience with technology. I think there's, again, it's so challenging because identifying the ones that, like, the bits of technology that are actually valuable and usable and figuring out how to incorporate them, it's hard work. And a good example of this right now, of course, ChatGPT is like the big thing everyone's talking about. And
Love it.
I've used ChatGPT and I get annoyed by it because I don't, like, I'll do something like ask it to explain something I know a lot about, something that I have a good knowledge about, and it gets a lot of it right, but not all of it right. And so the challenge I always run into, and ever I'm using ChatGPT for anything, is that because it's not 100% perfect and it makes small mistakes about some details about the thing I'm asking about, I don't trust it. And so that's one big technology that I see right now that's, again, very popular that I'm really not all on board with. But again, that's not about property management here.
You have to check it. Or one thing I will say is that ChatGPT is remarkably good for initial content generation or initial content analytics. So here's a couple ChatGPT hacks from a career technology, if that is that value to anyone. So we had this dispute. It involved an attorney of adjudicating some obscure portions of state legal code and our contract, and we were able to paste the state legal code and the contract into ChatGPT, and then say, "Hey, ChatGPT, according to, do you think that our lease agreement is in violation of this state law?" And it has to scan through 100 pages of legalese and parse it all out. And we asked it to please cite why it thinks that. And it went point by point and said, "Okay, so this line in your lease agreement, I think it might conflict with this piece of the state code, and this line in your lease agreement, they think it conflicts, but I think it's just fine." And it gave us like a bullet point. Now we still need a human to go through and manually review all those things. So we had one of our leasing agents go through and review. and we had ChatGPT go through and review, and then we compared their notes. And ChatGPT was right probably about 95% of the time. Out of 20 items, there's only one where there's any disagreement there. And ultimately, there was no portion of our lease where I would say we were like truly in any kind of violation or anything like that. This is just a public attorney persona trying to, cause trouble. I felt like it was very frustrating. But ChatGPT got through that analysis in like 60 seconds, and it took multiple days for our leasing agent to get through that analysis. And ChatGPT was about 90% right, 95% right. And then for content generation, we do bespoke contracts all the time. So let's say, we need to hire a signage vendor to get up in a bucket lift and hang a sign or something like that. It's like kind of a high risk thing. They might damage our property. You can literally just type in, hey, ChatGPT, I'm a property management company. I'm hanging up a sign on the front of my apartment building. I'm hiring a signage vendor. They're going to get in a bucket hoist. They're going to, I'm really worried that they might damage my building, that they might dig some ruts in the ground with their hoist, that, there's a huge amount of liability if they fall out of their bucket hoist. Please draft me a contract that would reflect these concerns that we can each sign. And then you review it. You don't just, send that right off to them, but it will generate you, like a 10-page contract that's a really, really good contract. And it thinks of a million things that you would never think of. And then you might add a few things in. We tweak maybe 10% of what ChatGPT spits out. And it's an incredible tool. We'll ask it to generate a first passive ad copy for our apartment building. Hey, we've got this apartment building. Here's the amenities. Here's our area. Use your own background knowledge of our area and other apartment buildings. Please generate us some ad copy. And it comes up with all kinds of ideas that we wouldn't have thought of. So that first pass of reading content or writing content, it's 100,000 times more powerful than a human being. But then you have to back it up with a human being. And it's getting better every day. It's almost scary how quickly it's getting better and our ability to use it as we kind of train ourselves to use it. So it's something that my whole team is using all day, every day, throughout the day.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, maybe I have to go and give it another shot because, last time I used it, I just I don't know.
While we're on the podcast, hey, what should we ask? So I was at a Tony Robbins Financial Summit. So there's 7, this was last week. There's 7 billionaires there speaking. There's 25 guests. There's, Ray Dalio and Paul Tudor Jones and just like incredible speakers. And Tony is like the most gifted public speaker I've ever seen, an incredible interviewer. And here's how he prepared his questions. He went into ChatGPT and he said, "Hey, ChatGPT, this is Tony Robbins. If you were me in the voice of Tony Robbins, with the mind of Tony Robbins, and you're interviewing Ray Dalio, what questions would you ask Ray?" And it spits out, yep, Tony and Ray have a really long relationship that goes back decades. And in all these other interviews, Tony's asked these questions. And it seemed like there was really good feedback and interactivity when Tony asked these questions 10 years ago. So Tony would probably ask, one of these questions and one of these questions. And here's 20 suggested questions. So those weren't necessarily like the final questions that Tony asked, but he said about 75% of the questions he asked Ray came from ChatGPT.
Oh, wow. Yep. Okay. I got to say, I think you may have changed my mind. I'll have to give it like I said, I'm going to give it another shot and see if I can get these kind of results because, that's pretty incredible.
Right now, if you were interviewing me, what questions would you ask me? I'm curious what ChatGPT is going to come up with. Don't wait on that, by the way.
Okay. I did. So, the other thing though, that again, coming with the background from technology and doing tech startups, I was expecting to mention was outsourcing to, I know the Philippines is a very popular place for a lot of property management companies to outsource to. And you've mentioned about that a little bit, but more specifically about outsourcing to those places. Have you tried doing that? And what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So we have one virtual assistant. We have one onshore persona who is, kind of a full, she's actually one of our most expensive employees. She's an accounting persona that has tons of experience managing accounting in Billiam. So, any person listening to the podcast with a property management background, you know how incredibly intense the accounting and legal overheads are for property management. So our VA, they manage our utilities. So, 1,000 doors, 1,000 sets of utilities. Utilities are just a nightmare for most property management companies. And there's different companies out there, vendors that will manage your utilities for you. We've looked at lots of options. My experience is that the quality is very poor and the cost is very high. So we have an absolute rock star VA. I believe she's in the Philippines. Very good English. Just a very smart person. I think the worst thing you can do is try and get like a cheap VA. We pay probably 20% more than we would ordinarily have to pay. You don't have to pay twice as much, but just pay more than other people are willing to pay. Find a really, really, really good person. If you can get a referral, if you can get a recruiter, a headhunter that's very experienced at this, I do not recommend that you go out and just kind of do your own thing, so to speak. Our remote person onshore that makes a very good American salary. She has tons of experience managing VAs because she was doing remote accounting for many years, so she has a lot of experience in that realm. So I attended a conference and I wanted to get a dossier and set of contact info and follow-ups and stuff. So I kind of just bundled together all of my offhand notes and the attendee roster and everything, sent that to the VA, and she had to do a ton of like transcription and conversion, put it all into like one Google sheet, looked at my calendar and said, hey, looks like these are your kind of 20 highest priority follow-ups from that conference. Here's like your next 10. Here's your next, 20 that are very low priority follow-ups. And then here's all the people that you didn't meet with that seems like they were there, should be on your radar, aren't on your radar, should they be on your radar? And then I annotated that. And then I sent that to our marketing person to add to our mailing list, schedule follow-up calls, send them a gift if they were, a person that, ought to receive a gift, just all those follow-ups. So an algorithm, actually not that different from ChatGPT, but that's a workload that there's no way ChatGPT would be able to do something like that. You need a skilled being that's thinking, that has really strong English skills, that's able to do that. And all these people, so something that I think really sets us apart is all these people. So we use Google Workspace for our property management company. I think that's the best product on the market, bar none. You can use, Microsoft product, that's similar offering, whatever, 6 of one, half dozen the other. But that's your email, calendar, chat, Google Drive, so you can do all your file sharing, Google Sheets, Google Docs, so you can do real-time data sharing inside documents. We use spreadsheets and docs and stuff. We have kind of like an internal Wikipedia system that's basically a bunch of Google Docs that everyone can edit for transmitting knowledge. So our VA has full access to all those things. I think a lot of people treat a VA as like a really low-end vendor. And you really want to pull in that VA so you're able to chat with them, you're able to talk to them on the phone. They need to be awake when you're awake so you can talk to them on the phone. You want them to be engaged. We had a whole company retreat like 6 weeks ago, and the onshore American persona, we flew her in. We try and get her in at least once a quarter to just be with us. I don't think that just 100% remote work works. I think everything has to be hybrid. We are in-office people. Throughout the whole pandemic, we're in-office people. Every single member of our team gets a laptop, and it's a best-in-class laptop, dual 32-inch curved 4K screens, Thunderbolt docks you can plug in, and we have these docks to all of our properties because we don't staff those site offices. And our remote people, our virtual people, we make sure that they all have the best tools money can buy, that they are as connected to us as possible in our systems day to day with our teams, experiencing those team meetings. And I think that engagement is everything. Like when they hear, like in our meeting today, we were having an issue where we couldn't delete a unit from our property management software, and we just had everyone there. And so trying to, there's like a lengthy conversation that led up to the realization we had the unit we needed to delete, and our remote person was on Zoom, and I'm like, hey, did you get all that? Can you take care of that? And she's like, yep. Okay, there it is. Whereas if you keep these people outside of your organization, you lose whatever that is, and then try to like replay that conversation. And there's probably a little bit of a telephone game, so they may not even necessarily get the correct information. And then there's this huge latency. And so a month later, it's not done or it's done wrong. And the cost of bringing these people in-house, of having W-2 employees, is high. But if you are really wanting to do this thing, I think you need to see employees as the asset they are. A lot of people see employees as liability. You see them as the asset they are. And the more W-2 employees you have, the better. We have in-house maintenance. We have in-house cleaning and facilities. We have, we're going to bring lawn and snow in-house, which that's a tough one, but we're going to do it. Every time we bring something in-house, it's tough at first. And then we're so glad we did after, surprisingly short amount of time.
Awesome. Yeah, I have worked with some. I don't like calling VAs. I know the term, but I find the term VA just seems to minimize what they're doing. Again, this has just kind of been my experience. I prefer to think of them as, again, like you said, full employees. They that just happen to be working remotely, and my experience when we started going from having no remote workers to starting to bring in some people from the Philippines is, especially starting out, it was extremely difficult to find people who could actually do the work well and were reliable and, looking for ways to add value and to actually do the work. But when you find them, at the company I used to work for, there was a remote, again, we call them remote assistants, but a remote assistant that she basically handled a big chunk of maintenance coordination. The one thing I think that a big mistake a lot of people make is they will use people from, again, these remote workers for customer service roles. And in my experience, and I'm again willing to hear other people's view on this, in my experience, the customer service roles are where it really starts to break down and runs into a lot of challenges. I can make an exception with some like after hours emergency calls. I can see where that can be beneficial, but even there, it's really hard to get it working well. And since the customer service aspect is such an important aspect of every aspect of a property management business, it's not something that you want to just outsource, especially to someone over in another country. Just small things about understanding the cultural significance of Walmart or what Hy-Vee is. Like, if you go even to some people down in Florida, as an example, they're probably not going to know what a Hy-Vee is. I mean, they can look at it and figure it out relatively quickly, but even within the same country, you're going to have some limitations there. And so trying to keep the customer service very localized and personal so people understand the weather conditions that are happening right now, I think is really important. So that's been my experience there.
Burton is not called brutal, by the way. And what we do, we have 1,000 units. What we do is we have a rotation, and every customer-facing member of our team has to do that rotation. So we have enough employees that's every 12 weeks. So what is that? 4 times a year you're on call. You're on call for a week. And so you get the emergency line. We call it the emergency line. It's not the emergency maintenance line. It is the emergency line. And when you pick up the phone, you say, "Hello, this is Black Swan Emergency. What can I do? What kind of emergency are you dealing with?" You set the expectation. "Oh, this is the emergency line. Sorry, I just have a little drip of water." "Okay, great. Please submit a maintenance ticket on that." People tend to use the emergency line when they get desperate, when they're not getting the customer service they need elsewhere. So having a good customer service experience helps a lot with load on the emergency maintenance line. But we have found that you really can't have a maintenance guy answer that line. You really can't outsource it. So we have our ops people, our leasing people, our management personas take a shift and answer the line. And that's how we get the level of customer service that we need to respond to that. Because how you respond to that emergency call is probably going to make or break whether or not that person renews, right? It doesn't matter what the rental rate is. It doesn't matter what the condition of the building is. It doesn't matter what their life circumstances are. If they had an honest to God emergency and you did not pick up the phone, there is no way they are renewing their lease. So we really hone in on that. We try really hard. You have to, record when there's a call. You can never miss a call. We have multiple redundant systems to make sure a call is never missed. And we have our highest level staff answering that phone as the first line response. Because for the most part, when there's an emergency, there's rarely actually an emergency. People just want to feel heard and assured that it's going to be taken care of very soon. And that's a short call. And you just need a really high caliber person. You need the opposite of a call center. You need the opposite of a VA picking up that phone. "Yep, I'm local. I see there's a blizzard out there. I know the snow removal's tough. I know the snow's going to be clear within 24 hours. Are you good? Is there actually an emergency here? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you for calling. I really appreciate it. I look forward to renewing your lease." We don't say that last part.
Yeah, that's again what we've also learned, that when you do have the emergency calls, establishing that this is an emergency line right away really helps. Because again, people are like, well, it's not an emergency. I just want to know if this property on 123 Street Avenue is still available. And it's like, well, this is just for emergencies, after hours, just contact us during business hours. and it gets rid of a lot of those challenges. Speaking of answering phones, though, you did mention earlier about that all your phone calls get answered, and this has been a challenge.
Yes.
When we are having a much bigger, so the company I used to work at, I think they had about 2,000 units, somewhere in that range, across 2 states at the time, and several properties, about 1,000 I can't remember, 500 single family houses. The rest were major multifamily properties. Anyway, one of the biggest challenges we had there was making sure that every single phone call got answered. And it was a really big struggle. And at the time, I wish I remembered it. I wish I wrote down the numbers. I did a bit of research. I was trying to figure out what actually is the answer rate within the property management industry. And what I found is that it's about 33%. So you have a 33% chance of getting a phone call. Again, this has been some time, and this is also before COVID, so I don't know if that makes any difference. But yeah, it was surprisingly low. We were trying to get, I think our target was 90%. Again, it's been a couple of years now, and we were getting closer to around the 60 to 70% is where we were at. So we weren't hitting that goal where I wanted to be, and it's just a big challenge. So ultimately my question is, how have you figured out how to answer your phone calls? It seems like the most basic thing, but how do you answer your phone?
It's the most important question.
Yes.
If you're not answering the phone every time the phone rings, nothing else matters. Like, that is the most important thing. So we use Google Voice. Again, we use Google Workspace. So it's a soft phone number. We don't have multiple cell phones. I think that's a terrible solution. You can forward that number anywhere you want. It's a local number. You can have rollover features. So like if you call and the first person doesn't answer, it rolls over to the next person. We stopped doing that though, because I found it took away some of the accountability. So you need to know that when your phone rings, if you don't answer the phone, like, it's on you. If you miss a call, so the way it's set up now is if you miss a call, it sends you an email to tell you that you've missed a call, in addition to you having the missed call on your cell phone. And then you just need to call them back as quickly as possible. And then management gets a report when that call is missed as well. So if you see several calls have been missed, you can reach out to that person and be like, hey, did your cell phone die? What's going on? We lost contact with one of our team members here this past weekend, which is really unusual. They were in a remote area showing a property, no cell reception for like an hour. It was a very long showing. And when we saw a series of missed calls, because there was a maintenance emergency at the same time, this person was out of reception. So we instantly switched that cell phone back over, or we switched that forwarding over to a different party, called back all the people whose calls had been missed, handled that maintenance emergency. That team member came back into cell reception range and picked it back up. We have a line for operations. So that's our general line. So we have hello@blackswanteam.com. That's the best way to reach out to us, is to just send an email. If you need to give us a call, please give us a call, and we're happy to answer the phone. We're always happy to answer the phone. We try really hard to make sure, if you don't feel in a good mental state to pick up the phone right now, ask for help. Someone else can pick up the phone this next hour or whatever, but it always rings someone's cell phone. There's no office line. We're 100% mobile, so you can pick up that phone anywhere you go. I always have this Plantronics Voyager 5200 headset on, except when I'm on camera or whatever. I pick up the phone every time someone calls. So not a lot of calls go directly to me, but leadership, the mindset of the leader determines the mindset of the organization. And so I tell my team every single week, our number one job is to pick up the phone. And if you need something and you're unable to reach your supervisor, call me. I will pick up the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what. I literally have this headset on, 24 hours a day. Please call, and I will pick up the phone to support you in picking up the phone. We have our emergency line, our ops line, our main number for just kind of general inquiries, and we have a leasing line. In fact, we have a couple different leasing lines, because the leasing call volume during the high season can be so extreme that the line is busy, so to speak, and we can split up that workload across leasing agents. So we have a rotation that's company-wide for our emergency on call. The ops team rotates the main number, and then the leasing team rotates their numbers. So each of those departments is kind of independently responsible for that. And we make sure that no one's ever on call for ops at the same time they're on call for emergency. We make sure they're not on call for leasing at the same time they're on call for emergency. And you only have to answer the phone during business hours. And we have a very polite voicemail that says, thank you so much for calling. We're going to call you back first thing tomorrow. But we can't have people answering general inquiries or leasing inquiries 24 hours a day. We do make sure that we answer leasing inquiries on the weekends. We do leasing showings on the weekends. That can be a tougher thing to staff. Operations, we don't staff on the weekends. I find most of those inquiries can wait. We don't lose a lead over a weekend, so to speak, the way we do with leasing. So we everyone has their cell phone, and we pay a mobile phone site, and we give everyone $30 a month or whatever to use their personal cell phone. They've got their laptop, they've got their phone, they've got the soft phone system for forwarding calls. We use Google Chat for everything. So if you are ever on a call and you're not sure what to do, everyone should have a headset, and they can chat with their team members at any time to get support on that call. So no one's ever alone with an on-call line. It really needs to be kind of a fanatical thing. Like, it has to be just a core article of discipline in your organization that you pick up the phone when people call, no matter what. And I learned this at Dell. I had the privilege to work for Dell for a time, and they really run the whole business with this culture. So in your email signature, it says, hey, would you like to talk to my boss? Here's the contact info for my boss. It's required. That's in your signature and on your voicemail. So if anyone's ever dissatisfied with that customer service experience, they're allowed to do that. We don't do that. Maybe we should. The culture that your boss always picks up the phone no matter what. Like, that's a culture we've reproduced here. And when I was working for Dell, I was working on cases where there'd be millions and millions of dollars at stake, and the training was, it really doesn't even matter if we fix the problem. It matters that we pick up the phone when they call. We pick it up instantly. And if we don't, it doesn't matter if we solve the problem. They're not going to be happy with the resolution. Whereas if we pick up the call and try our best, we can't fix it, they're probably going to be happy with the resolution. Even in cases where it's like, I'd be talking to people who are losing $1 million an hour due to an outage or an engineering escalation. And at the end of the day, the customer service mattered more than everything else, combined. So it has to be a fanatical thing that you impress upon your staff, that you always pick up the phone when people call. It's tough. It's really tough. And some people can't do it. And those are people that you really just can't have on your team. It doesn't matter how talented they are in other areas of life. In fact, we hire very few people with prior experience, because we find their culture, their expectations. You can't retrain someone, so we find people from the service industry, people like our construction manager. He's managing millions of dollars a month in construction, rehab, and maintenance tickets. He ran a coffee shop. He opened coffee shops for another entrepreneur and operated them before we hired him. We recruit servers, people just have really good communication and customer service skills. People from the hospitality industry, we love to recruit from the hotel industry, where there's a way higher level of customer service expectation. In fact, I have to kind of dial back that customer service expectation with those staff members. We almost never hire people with prior real estate experience, because we find it's difficult to set that expectation that we answer the phone when people call, and we make sure the customer is happy. The customer's not right, but we do everything we can to make them happy.
That's really cool. And so I have so much experience with that, where whenever we hired people who had previous property management experience, one of the biggest things I noticed was they had a very poor attitude about tenants. And even
they're a jailer.
Yes. And I see this even on a lot of Facebook groups I'm part of for property management. There's this tendency to just have this bad mindset about tenants, and that's a whole topic I could go on. But with the whole
we try hard to keep our staff out of those Facebook groups, out of the property management conferences. We discourage them from networking with other property management companies for fear that culture would infect our own. I agree 100%. And that's ultimately why we started a property management company, because we looked at the different options and we said, really, the only way we're going to get the outcome that we want is if we own it. We didn't have this dream of starting a property management company, but it was something that was absolutely required. And it's very uncommon in the industry, very uncommon. Almost every syndicator or private equity firm out there, they hire third-party property management. At the end of the day, property management is kind of a thankless scope of responsibilities, and it's not very profitable. But if you don't do it, if you don't bring it in-house, you don't get the outcome, because the property manager, they're the quarterback. They are the people that are setting the culture for your apartment building. They're the people that are controlling costs, that are driving quality outcomes, that are retaining tenants, keeping your vacancy down. That last $25 a month in rent, or the gap, we maintain approximately a 1% vacancy rate amongst our stabilized assets. The gap between like an industry standard 5% or 1%, you can drive a truck through it in terms of financial outcome. So yeah, we're happy to do the hard work if we get the outcome. And I think you just have to be willing to lean into the hard work. You can't outsource this stuff. You can't figure out a way to avoid answering the phone. You got to answer the phone. You got to do the hard work. You have to care about people and serve them when and how and in the way they need to be served. And if you do that, everything else is going to take care of itself. And I don't see that changing. I don't see there being a replacement for that anytime soon.
Absolutely. And there's a book, Extreme Ownership, by Jocko Willink and Leif Babbitt, and in it, there's one of their tenets is the concept of discipline equals freedom, and this is a big area with phone calls where you have the discipline to answer the phone call, and that's going to give you freedom. Because the inverse is also true. Freedom equals discipline. That if you are having the freedom to say, you know what, I can answer the phone, I don't have to answer the phone, it's up to me, then you're going to get disciplined in one way or another, because the problems don't go away by not answering the phone. Oftentimes, they get much worse. They start emailing you, they start complaining to other people, and it just snowballs out of there. I do have hopefully time for one more question.
I don't have a hard stop here.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Because I want to respect all your time, but you were talking about the whole idea here about that you realized that you had that if you wanted to have your properties managed properly, you just had to do it yourself. And and also the idea of this negative view people have on tenants. On your website, you've mentioned the concept of socially responsible property management. Maybe I'm getting that right. What is that? How do you view that? Can you tell me more about that?
So I think that's something you could easily just put on the wall and not actually practice, but it's something that we take really, really seriously. So our private equity fund has no fees whatsoever. 100% of the profit from our venture goes to our investors until they get a full return of capital, which is pretty revolutionary model in the industry. I've never heard of it before. And I think that we put our investors first more than any other, syndicator private equity fund manager I've seen. And I hope we change the industry. That's my big, hairy, wild, audacious goal there, is, what if there were no more fees, and what if investors really did come first? And then more than anything, we all take a backseat to the tenant. So the typical hierarchy is it's like the investor, is theoretically supreme, but really I think it's sometimes these active partners that are squeezing as much as they can out of the capital partners. People bring money to the deal, and the general partner, the active partner, is kind of holding the property manager's feet to the fire. And then somewhere beneath all that, the tenant is kind of the afterthought. And I hear people in the industry say things like, all tenants are liars. Like, wow, what a toxic mindset to live in. Or I've heard general partners say, this game would be great if it wasn't for tenants and employees. Like, wow, that I can't imagine what it's like to wake up in the morning and have that kind of mindset. It is a privilege that I get to serve my staff, and it's a privilege that I get to serve my tenants. So 5% of our private equity fund, it goes to charity. We built a school last year. We're working on helping a homeless shelter really upgrade their operations. We knock out maintenance tickets for a different local homeless shelter. 5% of our profit goes to our staff in the form of profit share, because I want our staff to feel that sense of ownership. And all that comes down to serving the tenant. Those are all tools to make sure everyone, the whole organization, is focused on serving the tenant. The tenant comes first. The tenant is the person who's ultimately paying bills. No one would buy an apartment building and just hold it vacant. That would be completely insane. And tenants are not liars. In fact, people often behave the way you expect them to behave. You are projecting your expectations all the time. So when we, go do a showing, we say we are a premium property management company, and we have premium assets. We're the Chick-fil-A of property management. Our product is more expensive than the other. We're sometimes like 25% over market in terms of our rental rate, and we have the customer service to back that up. And if we can't justify that premium, I want to know why. I want us to be running circles around the competition in terms of the customer service experience and the quality of the product that we offer our tenants. And then critically, our property management company, I'd say we're a very spiritually driven organization. We're a very values driven organization. And this probably, comes back to my ministry background. So I have seen apartment buildings that have changed hands 5 times in the last 10 years, where they've been bought and sold, bought and sold, bought and sold. Someone has a 5-year business plan, and then they hit that business plan in 2 years and they sell it and leave meat on the bone for the next person. This thing has been renovated 5 different ways. You're Your typical syndicator out there, they'll refinish the cabinets, they'll refinish the countertops, they'll refinish the bathtub and bathtub surrounds. They literally just like bomb the whole place in a coat of paint, and then they'll tell you, well, we need to sell it before the rehab wears out, because after just a year or two, that countertop that you've painted, the paint's chipping and it looks way worse than it did before. So we've never sold an asset. We have an indefinite hold period. It's an intergenerational wealth vehicle. This is something that you'll pass on to your heirs. We have a BRRRR business model. So we'll buy a property, do massive renovations to this property, and then return capital to our partners to cash out refi, and then they stay in the deal forever. And this drives everything that we do. So we don't repaint a countertop. We rip out the cabinets, we rip out the countertops, we put in new premium cabinetry and new stone counters that are going to look gorgeous 50 years from now. And that's less profitable in the short run, but it is way more profitable in the long run. The me from 5 years from now is going to thank the me from today that we put in those stone counters, put in luxury vinyl plank flooring. We'll even put in new hardwood floors. We have 3 different rehabs going on 100-year-old apartment buildings going right now, where we're ripping out kind of worn out old hardwood floors in some spots and patching in, and we've got this hardwood guy who's like an artist that can, all looks perfect and brand new when he gets done, looks better than brand new. Think about the impact that has on the tenant when they know that the person who owns the building is the person who runs the property management company, is the person that does the rehab, and they're not going anywhere. They're going to own this building decades from now. And the number that you need to call, that number where they pick up, that number is not going to change. We're going to be here for you. We're going to be here for the long run. And let's be real here for a second. We are on the bleeding edge of gentrification. We'll buy, an asset that's been neglected. Those deep value add assets are the things that we really specialize in. The assets that need a ton of TLC. These 100-year-old apartment buildings, they really haven't been renovated in that 100 years. So every assumption you can make about the condition of those buildings is probably pretty accurate. Ironically, they're in these really prestigious historic neighborhoods. So when we renovate them, we can double the value of these assets. We're not talking about just throwing a coat of paint on it, increase the value 10, 20%, and flip it for big profits. We're talking about doubling the value of this asset. And we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get there. But when we take over a building, there's often tenants. I mean, there's one building we bought where a tenant had lived there for 50 years. That's not someone that we can just kick out. That's not how this works. That is a failure of our obligation to our community. So we're transparent in all that we do. The moment we take over, everyone's very nervous. And, hey, what's going on? Or, are things going to change? We have a seller reputation in our community, but people know what our business model is, that we'll buy assets that need some TLC and completely change that community. And so we're very transparent with them. We say, here's what we're doing. Is this something that you're excited about, or is this something that you're fearful about? And if you're excited about it, okay, let's get you into our first renovated unit. You can help pick out the paint colors. You can be our block captain that shares that excitement and enthusiasm with everyone else in the building, so people don't get really nervous and kind of live in fear and uncertainty. And if this is something that you're fearful about, well, why are you fearful about that? Are you fearful about that because you're running an unlicensed pharmaceutical distribution operation? Well, you need to go tomorrow. Are you nervous about this because you're afraid you can't afford the new rents? Well, here's the rent levels we're looking at. Here's some other properties we have that are already renovated. They're at a lower rent level. Is this going to make sense for you? Neither of those make sense for you. Tell you what, yours is going to be the last unit that we renovate. We're going to make sure that you have all the time. And if you need to leave anytime before that, if you find a different living situation for you that works better for you, like you have full refund of your security deposit, give you a prorated rent refund. And if you have any questions, just give us a call anytime. We're here to answer your call. And it runs the gamut. So, we bought, one of these 100-year-old apartment buildings, and one of the units in that building, this was through the pandemic. So this was during the eviction moratorium. And feel free to edit this out later if this is not good for your listener. But there's a woman there, and she was doing prostitution and drugs, and we couldn't get into the unit before we bought the building. Had not paid rent in over 2 years because it was during the eviction moratorium. And we got into the unit the day after we closed, and we scheduled a time with her to come tour the unit. And we said, we're going to do a safety check here. We're going to remove any safety hazards that we find in the unit. And we had to go back and get a bucket because there were so many safety hazards, and we gathered up about a gallon drug paraphernalia from that unit. Torches and pipes, and there was like a canister of propane and God knows what else in that unit. I feel like we really should have had a hazmat suit to walk through that unit. We said, well, technically this is your personal property, so we're obligated to return it if you want. We'll make sure the police are present when we do so to make sure that process is respected. Just let us know if you'd like your safety hazards returned to you. But for the safety of everyone else in the building, we're going to remove these items right now. And we're going to be back tomorrow. And the next day, and the next day. And we have an organization we support that does drug rehab, and we know how hard that call is to make. We're happy to dial the phone. We're happy to give you a ride. We're happy to support you any way we can. There is no judgment whatsoever in our heart. This is something that's impacted my family. I grew up in Section 8 housing. I grew up in communities that were eviscerated by these things. And we are here to serve you. And we're never going to give up on serving you until you get the help that you need, not on our watch. We're sorry that the previous property management company allowed this to happen, out of sight, out of mind. And we had to visit 2 more times. It took 3 days, and we're able to get her help. And she got into rehab, and she's doing better today. Not amazing, but she's doing better today.
That is really cool. I mean, that's see, this is one of the things where I get very annoyed by the property management industry in general. I love being a property manager, and it's something that I find that I'm good at. But then when I see where all the ways that you can drop the ball as a property manager and
as a human being,
yeah, and it's just, even when you start having discussions about like, well, this isn't my job, or this isn't something that I need to be dealing with, or then you just start getting this mindset that, well, it's like one of the, going back to you mentioned about, installing all these higher quality materials and stuff. This is something that always bugs me, is you get these property managers and even owners oftentimes that will say, well, tenants, they don't care for the property. They just destroy everything. And so just get the cheapest stuff that you can get and just put it in there. It doesn't matter about the color. It doesn't matter if it matches. It doesn't matter if it's dated or not. Just get the cheapest thing in there and just call it good. And so, they'll put in these really cheap mini blinds or something that are just bound to break. And then sure enough, the tenant moves out, they come in, the mini blinds are broken, and it's like, well, see, they don't take care of their stuff. But it's like, if you just put in something nice, made it look good, and it showed that you actually do care about it. Like I rented from a place where when we moved in, a lot of the doors had holes in them, like the bedroom doors. And what they would do is they would say, okay, well, we moved this bedroom door to this spot so you can't see the hole, but then like the wood grain wasn't matching, and it was just it just made it very clear to me, like they didn't care about it because I'm just a renter, and it didn't make me didn't make me feel good. But whenever I see these properties where people have put a lot of care into it, and again, I think it could go too far, where it would, like, side note, I had an owner who, it was the house that he was renting out was a house his mother grew up in, and she had recently passed away, but she planted some tulips in the front yard, and he's like, I wouldn't rent it in the lease that the tenants have to take care of these tulips because my mother planted them. And I just had to say, look, I understand this, but that's not going to work. We can, but anyway, so that's going too far. But if you have a property you actually take care of, and you say, look, I really care about the materials and the tenant's experience, and if something goes wrong, I want to make sure that the tenant gets taken care of. Yes, eventually, given enough time, you're going to have a bad tenant that gets in there, and they're going to cause problems, and that's unfortunate. But a lot of people who see that, they really appreciate it, and they take care of it, and they stay there longer, and they're respectful of the property, and there's no issues. Like, and one other point that I want to make here on this is that the challenge that I think that property managers have is most of the people who give them a call are a lot of times the same people that keep giving them a call and say, hey, there's a problem here, this isn't working, I'm unhappy about this charge or whatever it may be. And so, but all the tenants that are not calling them are just living inside their home and being happy and not causing problems. And if maybe there's a small issue, they take care of themselves and they don't need a call because the neighbor is playing, music too loud at 7 o'clock at night. You don't hear from them. And so the perception you start getting is that, oh, it's just all the tenants that I have are these ones that are calling me and bugging me and always have the issues, but really most of your portfolio should be. And if it's
I have
not,
a hack that I can share, by the way, if that's valuable to your audience. And
yeah,
I do need
please.
to call on someone here. So we have what we call the happiness clause. So it's not an actual clause in our lease agreement, but when we have someone who you got squeaky wheels. So we provide an exceptionally high quality product, and most people really appreciate that and see how much we care and see the quality in that. But there's some people who, no matter what, it just seems like they can't be happy. And so we go to them, we say, we believe that the essence of unhappiness is unmet expectations. The essence of unhappiness is unmet expectations. And so based on the pattern of communication that we've seen so far, we believe it's not possible for us to meet your expectations. And we don't want anyone living in any of our properties whose expectations cannot be met, who can't be happy. So we're going to give you 7 days. And if you decide to take us up on this option, you can terminate your lease and you'll get a prorated rent refund, full security deposit refund, and we will give you a great referral to the next landlord. We'll help you pull up the moving truck if we need to, because that's how dedicated we are to make sure that everyone who lives in one of our properties is truly happy and has expectations that we can meet. If you don't take us up on this offer, then we're going to assume that your expectations are met. Do you understand? Just a long pause. And probably 90% of the time where we just have a really, really frank, transparent conversation with someone like this, that addresses the heart of the issue. It doesn't matter that the paint is scuffed or that the dishwasher didn't work when they moved in or whatever. And some people, they're just, I don't know, try to get a discount or there's a million different personalities. But when you speak to the heart of the matter, which is, we think that you have expectations that can't be met, that gives them a second to say, shoot, I think that might be true. Or, no, I hate these guys, I'm out of here. And the people who want to get out of here, I'm really excited to get those people off our plate as a management company. And we will, absolutely do everything we can to serve them in finding a better place to live that maybe their expectations can't be met there. Anytime you have any tenant escalation, you really need to speak to it directly. And very few people are willing to have that confrontational, that loving confrontational conversation, but that's what it takes. You just have to just be real with people. Like, hey, it seems like this has been kind of a train wreck movement. I remember there's one property, I don't know how this happened, but we forgot to renovate it. Like, we leased it, and this has never happened. We've renovated hundreds and hundreds of properties. So I feel like we're doing pretty well just as like a clerical error. And I remember they moved in like 10 o'clock on a Friday night, drove the moving truck cross country, and I got a call, an escalation. They said, Nick, it finally happened. We forgot to renovate a property. And these people were sight unseen. And they showed up and they were humored about it, which I really appreciated. But they said, are we like punked? Like, is this like a candid camera kind of show or something? And I immediately went out there. I dropped everything, went out there. Like, oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened. Like, what can we do to serve you? We've got all these other properties. You want to move into one of these? Like, this property was bad. Like, it needed a gut remodel, and they got the keys and they moved in, and it just, I don't know, it just speaking to the heart of the matter. I am so sorry this happened. This has never happened before. This is inexcusable. We're going to do everything we can to make this right. This is absurd. This is completely absurd. This should not happen, but we are not going to give up until we have served you every way we possibly can. So the owner of the company himself is going to go take you on a property tour at 10 o'clock at night to find and we'll move other people around. We'll do whatever it takes. And when people feel that, when they feel that you really care and you're going to do whatever it takes to serve them, all of a sudden, all that other posturing, like they're asking for their money back and they need to sue us. And I'm like, no, you don't need to do any of those things because we care about you. Like, you don't have to go to those measures. And finally, when they understood that, their guard dropped and they moved into one of our other properties and they loved it and they've renewed with us ever since. But people are afraid, I think, to just have that transparent, frank conversation with someone when there's a challenging situation in front of you.
Awesome. Well, I'm starting to get some drilling going on in the unit above me, so I will have to be ending this no matter what. But before I do, is there anything that you want to plug?
Sure. So anyone who's listening here, they can go to meetblackswan.com, meetblackswan.com. You can learn more about us. So we have a course. 100% of the revenue from that course goes to charity. It's a pay what you can model. That's how we built the school, was with revenue from that course. So we give away our whole playbook. What light fixture we pick out, how we put together a rental listing. There's over 100 modules, workbook, everything that any property manager, I think, would need to reproduce what we've done. So we jokingly call that the cookbook. If you go through the cookbook and you decide, man, this looks delicious, but I'd like to just go to the restaurant, that's our private equity fund. So that course is basically our training manual for our staff. So you can invest in our private equity fund, and guess what? Everything in the course, that's how we run our private equity fund. That's the light fixture we pick out. That's how we put together our rental listings, that sort of thing. There's a link to my calendar, my wife's calendar. If you want to, you're welcome to walk time. We're happy to serve you any way we can. We don't have any private equity fund opportunities that are open right now, but you can jump on the wait list. You can sign up for our newsletter, see our Facebook group, and you can just ask us questions in Facebook if you want. We do a free group coaching call every month for people who sign up for our course. So if you have some burning questions you want to ask, that's the best way to get our time to kind of do that. But yeah, anyone can go to meetblackswan.com and connect with us there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for taking the time today. I really do appreciate it. It's been extremely valuable, not just for me, but I'm sure my listeners as well. And also for my listeners, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, any podcast platform as well, Instagram as well. It's the PMP Podcast on all of these. So thank you so much for listening. RJ Isaac, your host of the PMP Podcast. Have a great day.